What about the Arizona Cardinals, Tommy, and maybe how they might be able to compete with the Los Angeles Rams inside of the NFC West? Now, look, it was not pretty for Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals, taking on the Rams last season. They did win one matchup, but they lost two others, including in the wild card round where the LA Rams just absolutely got after Kyler Murray. Von Miller went into his postseason mode alongside Aaron Donald, and everybody was wondering, what's next for Kliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray? Kliff gets an extension. Steve Keim gets an extension. But now it's like Kyler Murray yet to have an extension as of the time that we're recording this. And there's a lot of questions about maybe what his future may look like with the Arizona Cardinals. But, outside of speculation, let's just talk about the football facts right here. Kyler Murray is an energizing player. What he's able to offer there inside that Cardinals offense too, the big key. And as we saw in the postseason and as we saw after the injury, DeAndre Hopkins is a big part of how that offense really runs and the success and fluidity of it. And then you add in, James Conner, he's going to be the premier back, and there's Eno Benjamin behind him. You're going to have those two guys at tailback. Well, you still re-sign Zach Ertz, and you also re-sign Max Williams at the same exact point there too. So you're bringing back a lot of continuity, but there's some questions about maybe some other guys that you can specifically at the receiver position. You lose Christian Kirk to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Do the Arizona Cardinals have enough firepower, in your opinion, Tommy, to be able to maybe match what the LA Rams offense now has with the additions of Allen Robinson alongside yourself Cooper Kupp at this point? They are loaded, the Rams are. And I don't know, can the Cardinals keep up?
I think the Cardinals can do okay against most teams, but aside from the Rams, I don't think they can. I think the Rams still have too much firepower on this offense. Like you talked about, you lose Robert Woods, and if you do bring back OBJ later on, he's probably not going to be ready until like the offseason, until at least around like more like the postseason time. You've got Cooper Kupp, and you bring in someone like Allen Robinson, who is just one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, who I'm actually glad that the rest of the world can actually watch Allen Robinson play, because he's kind of like a similar thing to Matthew Stafford. He was kind of stuck in Detroit and didn't get to see him play very often unless it was like a very rare primetime game outside of a Thanksgiving Day game. I'm glad Allen Robinson kind of get the exact same kind of style treatment, going out there under the spotlight, and we're able to watch him kind of flourish with Matthew Stafford. To me, I think the wide receiver room still needs a lot of help because Larry Fitzgerald, because you lost him, they never really found a good way to replace him last year. AJ Green did okay at times. He actually stayed healthy for the most part, but he never was able to take that number one role when guys like DeAndre Hopkins were out for quite some time. I think he was much better as the number two. Rondale Moore, to me, is the most confusing one of them all. You draft him fairly high. I believe he was a second-round pick out of Purdue. But then he just doesn't get used in a way that was anywhere indicative to what his value was based on back when he was with the Boilermakers. The lowest ADOT in the league, average depth of target down the field for any receiver last year. Didn't get a lot of volume. He had a one game where I believe he had 11 targets with 11 receptions or whatever, but he didn't even crack, I think, 60 yards that game, which makes no sense to me. So to me, you've got to find a better way to scheme in someone like a Rondale Moore, who I thought his style of play fit perfectly with what the Arizona Cardinals needed. So that's kind of one of the more baffling ones. I'm sure Kingsbury will figure something out there. But yeah, the health of DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the biggest thing. You can't afford to have him and Kyler both missing games. It seemed like for a month in a row last year, it was, they're a game time decision. There's still a game time decision. Stop calling it a game time decision if they're not ready for game time. Let's stop this nonsense, because clearly neither of those guys are ready for a little bit of time, and it definitely hurt the offense. They've managed a way to kind of get around it, but you still need your best players out there. And DeAndre Hopkins is a guy you can give him 150 targets and know he's going to come down with around 100 receptions, 1,200 plus yards. You can target him in the end zone for about, probably another 8 touchdowns. He is one of the best receivers in the NFL without question about it. You've got to use him that way, and he needs to be on the field. The number 3, I think, is honestly an even bigger question. Is it going to be Antoine Wesley? Does he kind of take that step forward like some people kind of thought he would last year? I think it's more likely they try to bring in someone still with free agency, still going on. There's still other receivers that are out there. But I think the draft makes a ton of sense here, too, for them trying to bring someone else in. I just hope they use them better than they did with better than Rondale Moore last year. I think bringing Zach Ertz was a massive bonus, because that was one of those trades where I think both sides were happy with what happened. I think the Eagles were okay because they had Dallas Goedert. They could be able to let him kind of go. And then Zach Ertz comes in and has probably his best season since his best times going back to the 2017, 2018 kind of years with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that was a massive step forward for him. And look, I think James Conner is probably gonna have a little bit of regression, like touchdown wise. I don't think we can expect him to have like near 20 touchdowns again. But I think as that number one, I think he showed like, yeah, he can absolutely handle the workload. It's an injury concern, obviously, because he does have some nicks and dings and bruises throughout his time with Pittsburgh. You don't feel comfortable with Benjamin as the number two. We'll see what else they want to do there. But I mean, in terms of offensive side of the ball, like I said, outside of the Rams, I think the Cardinals can kind of keep up with about anyone else out there. You've got playmakers on defense. You got guys like Isaiah Simmons, who I think are going to be an incredible player in this league. We know he's one of the best athletes. Coming out of Clemson, actually ran a quicker 40 when they lined up next to Travis Etienne, was actually beating him in races. You've got some other guys on this team. I know you still got J.J. Watt on this one. They also made a trade so they can kind of free up Zaven Collins, take another step forward on this defense too. So I like where the Arizona Cardinals are. There's a few questions, don't get me wrong, but I think they can try to compete there for a wild card spot in the NFC this year, which is going to be a lot easier to get than you're going to find in the AFC.
Well, they had such a hot start last season, then just kind of fizzled out, which is disappointing.
Obviously, it was 11-0.
Jordan Hicks, they got off to a really good start there.
Yeah.
They lost Jordan Hicks to the Vikings in free agency. They lose Chandler Jones to the Las Vegas.
That's the big one you can't replace.
That's hard to replicate that. So I imagine a lot of their focus, in the NFL draft, because this will obviously release after the NFL draft actually happens on YouTube as a clip. We'll see if they decide to address that position there. But that's the Arizona Cardinals there.